How can I control the chaos of my classroom? What is Kami and how can it support student learning? What does it take to build an education YouTube channel? Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live on YouTube every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's Teacher on Fire is Stephanie Howell. In education since 2014, Stephanie has been widely recognized as an education technology leader and has spoken at conferences around the globe. With a master's in curriculum and instruction and educational leadership, she is one of the founding members of Global Google Educator Groups and Gold EDU. Even more fun for me is that Stephanie is a fellow education podcaster and YouTuber, so I know we're going to get into some fun conversations about education content today as well. You can follow Stephanie on X at Mrs. Howell24, at goldedu.org, and of course on her YouTube channel, Gold EDU. Stephanie, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to light it up?
I am. I'm ready to light it up. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure, Stephanie. I've been waiting for this for some time, and we're going to talk about the Teachers on Fire awards that you cleaned up a little while ago. But first of all, let's get into your story a little bit. Would you share with us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you faced in your teaching or education career, and then describe how you overcame it?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges, it started kind of in second grade though. I was diagnosed with a learning disability. And I kind of started to develop low confidence, kind of self-helplessness as well when it came to school. I hated going to school. It was awful for me. My schooling was a lot of passive learning. So my teachers would teach in direct instruction, and I would kind of have to just sit there, take notes. Sometimes we had to do round robin reading, and I'd be like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this is what paragraph I have, right? And then I would not even focus on the content because I was just so afraid of reading in front of my entire class, because that's something that I really struggled with. And so as the years kind of went on, and I was not expecting to go into education because I was just so turned off by school. I was so upset of how kind of the schooling system was, and I just felt like I don't even want to do this. I don't even know what the real world was going to look like. And so I kind of thought, maybe marketing, maybe interior design. And then high school came. And when high school came, I started volunteering my time with other individuals who had more severe disabilities than me. So they were more physical. And when it came to working with this group of students, I fell in love. And so that's when I realized that I can use my disability and my kind of learning experience to help students that also struggle. Because again, I kind of felt like, oh, it's just me that struggles. And when I was able to really connect with these other students in my high school and be a peer mentor to them and help them go to lunch and help them learn career kind of skills and social skills, I was able to then realize that, okay, I need to go into college and get a special education degree. And so that's how I started off my career. Is I went to school. I started off at Ohio State, and it wasn't for me. Again, it was that direct instruction model. And I had a friend that was like, hey, have you heard of Western Governors University? And I was like, no, I haven't. And so it was all online. Learning was completely different. If you're not familiar with how Western Governors is structured, you have a mentor. So it's one-on-one conversations. I was no longer in a class of 20 to 30 different people, sometimes 50 people in college, trying to learn. I felt comfortable asking questions. It was self-paced where I could move at my own speed, my own my own way of kind of learning. And so again, it was just great to be able to meet one-on-one with my instructors, but then also learn not just by reading. They provided multimedia approaches to learning. So that was kind of my first experience of what this blended learning could kind of look like. And it completely changed. And it made me start to realize that I could learn, because for so many years, I felt like learning's not for me, right? I just felt like, because I was used to my teachers kind of being like, we're going to read. And then it was direct instruction where In college, I had videos, I had audio files, I had all of these different resources, articles, images to help me understand the content. A person having a conversation with me, that it made learning a whole new way of perspective for me. And then I started teaching and I started working with individuals with disabilities. And I guess too, I want to make sure that everyone kind of knows, like, that lone moment didn't always go away. I really struggled when I became in education, when I became a teacher, because I would hear how teachers would talk about me, like I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's how they view students with disabilities, some of the teachers that I worked with. And again, it just brought back like, oh, like I kind of kept it hidden for a while. And then what I was able to overcome it is when I was accepted into the Google Innovator Academy. And when I was accepted there, I finally felt like I was around educators who understood me, that were cheering me on. And it was the community that I always needed, because once they were like, Stephanie, you're not crazy. We want to change, we want to innovate, we want to support all students, no matter what they have to overcome. And so that's when I started to really realize, oh, I can use this struggle that I kind of kept to me so long as an excitement, as a passion, as a way to support students that also struggle.
So powerful. I love how your own education and learning journey has shaped your values and your practice today as an educator. And I also love the career advice for our current high schoolers. Think about what ignites you when you serve others. Think about those passions that you just enjoy sharing and find so much fulfillment in. And think about following that thread as a career track. I think there's a valuable lesson there as well. Well, Stephanie, I want to congratulate you on the publication of Control the Chaos: What It Takes to Create Order in the Classroom and Teach Executive Functioning Skills. That was the book that you published in 2022, if I have the year correct. Here's a look at the cover, not sponsored, but that's a pretty impressive accomplishment. Very exciting. So I want to zoom in on that a little bit and ask this question. Here it is. You argue for, quote, combining the teaching of executive functioning skills with a technological, updated, blended learning system to meet the needs of all learners. So I know there's a lot there. Can you unpack some of it for us?
Yeah, so after I started teaching, I was offered an instructional technology coach role, because they were like, Stephanie's doing all this crazy stuff to support students with disabilities with technology. And so I fell in love with how technology could support my students. Because again, when I was in school, it was like dial-up, and it was very rough getting on the computer. It was rough researching. We had to print our papers. Like, our teachers, wouldn't give us feedback throughout the process. It was always, when you're done writing, turn it in. And so in college, again, internet started to become really easy. And with Western Governors, you had to turn it in online. So I started to realize how technology could motivate, support, and encourage my students. So I found, I think it was like in 2014, this thing called Google Classroom. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, right? But it was like the old version of Google Classroom. And I was like, let's try it out. And so I tried it out with my students, and I was able to provide them choice and voice, and they were able to start writing with technology. And so that was kind of the start. And as an instructional coach, when I would go into other classrooms, what I noticed is executive functioning skills when it came to blended learning were lacking. My teachers wanted to innovate. They wanted to move to blended learning. They wanted to try and use technology, and they wanted to include self-pacing in the classroom. But executive functioning skills with some teachers, because adults might lack them as well, but also some students were lacking. They would expect their students to start working on something, but were wondering why students couldn't break down the task. They wanted students, to maybe do something, and then all of a sudden something happened, so they needed to be more flexible, and some students weren't able to deal with that flexibility. And so as I was going into classrooms, observing, helping teachers, I started to realize that we weren't including resources to be interweaved with the curriculum and within our blended learning for executive functioning skills. And so I kind of piloted with one of my teachers that I worked really closely with. And what we started to do is I did intense coaching cycles with her. And so it was me and her. We met, we planned the lesson. I'd come in, support, and then we would reflect throughout. And there wasn't like a whole lot of research that was out there. So I kind of had to take different pieces of what I could find when it came to executive functioning. And we had to kind of create our own activities. So when it came to self-pacing, rather than like telling students what to do, we really had to break it down. We had to think and use backwards design to say, okay, here's our end goal. And sometimes we would make like a roadmap or a must-do, can-do list for students. But then we had to start really working with the students. Okay, if you get stuck, how do we control? How do we show our emotions with it? If we need to watch a video, how do we watch a video? Are we self-aware? Are we using metacognition to know that didn't make sense? Let me pause that video and rewind. And so when it came to the book, it was really taking those 3 skills of executive functioning, technology, and blended learning, and how can we kind of create this classroom and put it together. And so again, we really wanted to create those flexible learning spaces. But if your students don't have the advocacy skills or the skills to know, I need to chunk this task up, this project, and be able to accomplish it by many steps, they're going to really struggle in your classroom. And so I think that's why a lot of teachers go to that direct instruction, because again, it's very guided by the teacher. There's less classroom management issues. But what we were finding is once we taught the students and using technology to help teach those skills, such as Google Calendar or using Google Classroom to help kind of know, okay, here's what you got to do. Here's the order, using Google Slides to create roadmaps, using Kami to also provide video, audio directions, and indirect feedback to the students. We started to see a huge success in this classroom where students were excited. But again, we had to break it down for them. We weren't able to just say, here you go. And sometimes the teacher might start with station rotation to kind of help the students get into that routine. But a lot of times I was seeing the teachers wanting to kind of go directly to personalized playlists, and it wasn't working because the students didn't have the skills in order to just kind of self-pace through the lesson.
That is amazing. And what a package you bring together there. On a really simple, sort of humorous note, I remember teaching 8th grade years ago before internet was sort of a common asset in most classrooms. And I remember my students carrying around these binders full of handouts and worksheets. Do you remember that? Uh-huh. And I'm probably older than you, but I remember for some of these students, they just didn't have the executive functioning skills, or maybe they were just maybe they were unmotivated. I'm not sure. But their binders were a disaster of papers just stuffed in there. And I remember thinking once Google Classroom rolled around, wow, that really Google Classroom, Google Drive, Calendar, as you said so well, it just solves a lot of those problems for those students. And I think sometimes we forget that little detail when we talk about, oh, should we be going digital or not? Should we be using paper or not? Well, the digital workspaces are a huge help for some students. Let's not overlook that. On that note, maybe we don't have a whole lot to add, Stephanie, but how can technology support inclusion today? That's such a buzzword, let's say, and rightfully so, but how can technology help here in terms of supporting inclusion in the classroom and meeting the needs of all learners?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the tools that are available that students have at their fingertips now. They're able to have the computer read aloud to them. They're able to have their teacher have an audio clip of them explaining the directions, or even screen capture each of the different steps. But if we don't teach our students how to use those supports, again, it goes back to that video where I walked into a classroom and the teacher was like, yeah, their Ed Puzzle shows that they watched it. But when I'm looking at the student, they have another tab up. They're working on something else, like they're multitasking. And there's a lot of research that shows that we can't multitask. And I'm like, well, did you teach the student how to watch the video? Do they know how to pause? Do they know that they can go in and slow down the pace Do they know that they can, speed up if they do understand that content a little bit? And so again, it kind of goes back to teaching those skills and teaching the students how to use those skills. And it's also a teaching. We can't just expect technology such as the read aloud or the dictionary tool within to aid our students, right? Like that is a great tool, but we also need to change our instruction. We can't just sit there and expect the computer to be able to read or teach our students. We are teachers. We need to come in and intervene. So small groups, right? Those are huge. If you can meet with your students one-on-one and provide them feedback or even show them how to do activities. I also believe in inclusion where there's two different teachers. So you've got the reg ed teacher, but you also have your spec ed teacher in the same classroom. And what I love is when I can walk in a classroom and not know who is who. When you can walk in and you don't know that special ed teacher is a special ed teacher. You don't know that the reg ed teacher is. And so we had this team of teachers that when you walked in, you had no idea. And I just love that about a classroom, how they've created that bond of co-teaching together in that partnership. And so again, it becomes kind of more of an instructional focus on, yes, tools can help us, but it's also how can we support our learners? How can we start to differentiate within the classroom to provide what the students need? Can you use post-tests and create that metacognition within your students so they know, hey, this is an area of weakness for me. I'm going to do this, this, and this to master this skill. So again, kind of going back and thinking about, yes, the tools are great, but it's also down to your teaching as well when it comes to providing that space for your students to be successful in your classroom.
That's so good. I want to move to Cami, Stephanie, as Teacher Success Champion at Cami. Love that title. Introduce us to the platform. It's one that I've heard a lot about from people like you and my friend Fonz Mendoza, but at My EdTech Life, let's give his show a shout as well. But I'm not familiar with it. I haven't used it. So on a macro level, what makes this tool awesome and how does it support student learning?
Yeah, a lot of people think it's just a PDF annotator. They get that from COVID. I hear a lot of people are like, I haven't touched Cami since COVID. It was great. I needed it as my PDF annotator. But our engineers listen to teachers. They really listen to what teachers need. And so Cami is a go-to if you're looking for blended learning. It's a great tool. There is an application in there. It's called ClassView. And within ClassView, you can view all of your students at the exact same time. So because of that, I can see when a student adds something to the document. And when they add something, I can either give them like, yes, great job, or I can do a no. You can also build an annotation bank. And so if you want to go in and preload your annotation bank, for example, when I taught 5th grade math, fractions were awful. And so because of that, I knew that my students were going to need to change the denominator. Some of them, we're going to ace that. Others of them are going to need a graphic or a video or an audio clip or something to remind them of what they need to do, or even a picture of it worked out. Other students are going to need maybe a resource on simplifying. Other students might need some calculation support. Other students are going to need an extension. And so because I already know the misconceptions my students might have based on this activity, first, I do want them to try it. I want them to try it without those supports. But then as I'm watching them in real time on ClassView, I can go to my annotation bank, click and grab it over to their document. So this student, Johnny, he needs this. He gets that resource on changing the denominators. However, maybe Alfonso, he needs a resource on an extension, or he needs another question, or he needs a find the error type of example for him. I can grab that over. I can also have blank pages in there. So if I need different activities for different students based on their skill level, and I can kind of base it on DOK level. Okay, here's a student that needs DOK 1, 2, 3, 4. I can grab and drop those resources onto their blank documents, and they all are working on different things. And I'm able to monitor it, see where they're at, and then add another page below, and I can add additional resources to support their learning. Another thing is maybe every student is really struggling with that denominator. I can notice that really quickly on my formative assessment screen. Instead of pausing the class, I can go into update work, create a video, find a resource on YouTube, send it out to my students, and they all get it at the same time. I don't have to pause the class. I don't have to interrupt. I don't have to delete the assignment. It goes to every single learner. And so that is huge for blended learning, because when you're working in a blended learning session, you need to be able to differentiate. You need to be able to provide scaffolds to your students. You need to be able to quickly look at your data and pull up students to say, okay, we're going to work on a small group on this activity, and then we're going to pull this next group. And if I notice that some of my students, when we're self-pacing, have more questions about an activity that I assigned and I didn't give good directions, that never happens, right? But it does. That happened to me a lot. I'd be like, oh, these are great directions. And then the kids that were working ahead of pace would be like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. And so I could use that group that's ahead, create another video, another resource on my own directions, use update work, and send it out to every single learner. So that was just, again, it was helpful because then I could keep teaching. I could keep working with students. I could keep giving feedback, and they are more active learners because they have the resources, they have the support. Rather than getting upset and frustrated that they don't understand and not doing anything, I can chunk the assignment so my students know, do this first, do this second, and then they are able to get those resources in order to be successful. So those are just 3 of my favorite features. There's a lot more within Kami. But again, that class view is huge for a blended learning classroom when you really want to be able to say, okay, here's where you're at, here's your individual feedback, but then I have update work if I need to send out something to every single learner.
So good, so exciting, and I love the real-time aspect of that. I think there's so much power in that when we think about formative assessment and adopting our instruction to meet the needs of our students on the fly in real time, and that's incredible. So powerful. Thanks for joining us, Teachers on Fire. If you're getting value from this conversation, give this video a like on whatever platform you are joining us. I don't know if there's anything left, but is there a coming feature on Kami? Again, not sponsored, but is there a feature on the way or one that has just arrived that is getting you excited?
Yeah, so when it comes to blended learning, assessment is huge, right? And so when it comes to assessment, Kami actually does have questions built in. And what they're working on, it's already kind of out there as well, it's a newish push out, is insights. And so when it comes to that data, you can click this little button and have like a quick overview of your students' average, and then who's your top students, your middle, and your low, and your groups are already broken up for you so you can pull and regroup. There's also another tab in there where you can view it by question. And so if I know that question 6 was missed by most of my students, I might need to add some spiral review into the lesson and quickly support my students on their learning. So there's a lot of different resources kind of built in, but that's one of my newest favorites. Again, it's just been recently pushed out. And with questions, there's going to be a little bit more pushed out, hopefully by the back to school season that I can't share just yet. But again, it's going to be fantastic to view. And if you want a sneak peek, message me in about a month and I would be more than happy to meet with you and like show you for a quick 15 minutes all that Kami can do. But again, it's great because within questions, you need that data. And I think when I work with teachers, they're scared of that data. They're scared to share that data with their students. But when it comes to data, I've been using a lot of EduProtocols in my classroom as well when I was a coach and also in teaching. And EduProtocols are a great way. They're high impact, but low prep. And so it's great because, again, we don't have a lot of time. And so when you're thinking of that high impact EduProtocols, and one of them is called Fast and Curious. And what you do is, this is what kind of made me realize data is not scary and you can gamify it. And so when it comes to Fast and Curious, what you're able to do is your students can do a test or a gamified version of an activity. And so if they're doing it in Kami questions, they can do that. You give them their score on Monday. They've never seen the material before. It's a pretest. They score like 20%. And I would be like, I don't want to show that to my students. They scored really, really low, right? But they haven't learned the material. So share that with your students. They get 20%. They do the same test or in a similar test on Tuesday, and now they're at maybe a 30%. Okay, you've taught one day of that and they went up by 10%. Then you do another day of it. They're now up to maybe 40, 50%, right? It's Wednesday. If you're using this with vocab, take the words that they missed, do a Frayer model with it, do activities with what they missed to improve their score. And so then on Thursday, their score should go up again, by Friday, even more. So when I saw that Edu protocol, I was like, oh, kids are motivated by data. Why am I hiding this from them? Why was I hiding that 20%? Because I thought it was an awful score, right? But they haven't learned the material yet. And so I was able to really show them, motivate them. But then they were also starting to look at the questions that they got wrong and learning the material. Why did I miss this question? What do I need to do to improve? What is it that I can change about this question, update? And so again, using data can really help you. And so with Cami, those Cami questions, but also using that insight to help drive your instruction, but also to motivate your students and help them build those skills of, okay, I was here. What's my game plan? What is my game plan to do this? Again, it doesn't come naturally. You'll have to do some coaching at the beginning. But if you do that coaching in September, October, by November, they're going to soar the rest of the year because you've taught them that skill.
So rich. It's funny, the things that we think are worth hiding from students, right? That in the example you just shared, the very data that perhaps will motivate them and encourage them through the week, we traditionally are so reluctant sometimes to put that in front of students. Beyond your work with Cami, Stephanie, what motivates you to create and share content with other educators? I mean, just this whole idea of creating YouTube videos and podcasts and writing and all the other activities that you do. What's the motivation?
Yeah, the motivation is it's a hobby. It gives me energy. I love Mel Robbins. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but oh yes. She's like my life coach. And so I listen to her podcast. I think it's twice a week. And this latest episode that they just published, when you were asking me this question beforehand, I was like, oh my gosh, creating is an A category for me. And so she says, her guest that was on, again, tons of research if you love Mel Robbins, is there's 4 different categories. We've got A, we're really good at it. We're excellent at it. It gives us energy. Creation is one of those things that gives me energy. And it's just something that I have to find myself time to do, because when I don't find myself creating and sharing, I start to kind of, feel like, why am I so tired, right? Why is it? But when I have a day where I'm able to create, even if it's just for 30 minutes, I have more energy ready to go and to love and share with others. And so she talks about those A tasks. We also have B tasks. We're really good at them, but we might not just enjoy doing them as much. And then we have C tasks, which we're average at. And then there's D, we're awful at, and it drains our energy. And so when I was thinking about those 4 categories, I was like, okay, what is it that does give me energy? Because you want to live there. The other letters, you want to delegate those if you can, or you want to kind of say on your calendar, sometimes you do have to do things you don't like. So today's just going to be one of those days where I crank out the list of things that are going to drain my energy. But yesterday I spent a whole day of creating, and I had more energy for my family. And so again, think about what is it that brings you energy, and find those people that you can delegate things to that drain those energies.
Such great advice. That was a TikTok right there. I look forward to making that after this conversation, but I completely resonate with everything you just said. And, sometimes people look at me, and I'm sure they look at you, Stephanie, and the question I hear is, how do you find the time or the energy to do the work that you do? And I say back to them, well, you don't understand. I mean, this is my lifeblood. This is what lights my fire and keeps me going. And so getting up on a Saturday morning to record conversations is actually such a joy for me. And maybe it's an A category activity for me as well. Thank you for that. Tell us where the name of the Gold EDU YouTube channel came from, who your content is for, and on a practical level, Stephanie, how have you managed to publish almost 2,000 videos in 3 years?
Yeah, so the name came from a personality test.
Okay.
And so back in COVID, one of like global GEG, we did sessions all of the time. It was insane how many sessions we produced during that time. And with that group, Stephanie Rothstein, she had this like passion and this test that she used with her students, and it was the True Colors test. And so you take the test, and she made us all take it. And then we couldn't know what our colors meant until the video. So she like added some tense moments there. And so mine was gold. And she's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, I'm like, what does gold mean? Like I've never really was into personality test until her. And so then she did this talk. It's still on YouTube if you're interested in it. It's Can We Talk EDU. And when I went to that session, it blew my mind, because I learned that I was a gold, and I drive people crazy, because golds are your people that they like control. they are the ones that are like, we need a plan and we're going to do it this and this way. And I'm that person. And like, they also, they get crap done. And so you've got these other colors. And when we were working on some projects with global GEG, or I hate group work, right? Like I end up usually doing majority of the work. But after watching that session, I learned I wasn't respecting the other colors, right? And so there's other colors in this world. You've got blues, who are your people. Like they love people. And I realized in my coaching, because I was a gold, when I would start my coaching cycles, I would say, okay, what's the to-do list? What's number one? Let's get it done. But my blues, they needed me to stop and pause and say, how are you today? And I wasn't doing that. And so that was one like realization I started to have is, okay, some people are good with me saying, here's our task, let's go, 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 go. Other people are really upset that I didn't even ask them how their day was. They are upset that I didn't check in on them when they had surgery, right? And so I started to realize that. And in my calendar when I was coaching, I would put in, this teacher has surgery. This teacher, her son has this big project coming up that he's about to present. Check in on them, send them a text message. And as I started to do that, my coaching sessions started to just really rocket sky, because again, it was focusing on different people. Another thing is there's greens. These are the people that love research. And so, coming with them, and they're also the ones that question. So I'm a gold. I want to get crap done. Greens slow me down because they're like, what do you really think about that, Stephanie? What does the research say about that? And so again, I was just like, oh, I don't like greens. They're always questioning me. They're always wondering why I have to do something the way that I do. And then with all of those different colors, I was able to really kind of, again, reflect on myself. It made me a stronger person that year, because I knew who and what and how I needed to respond to different people. And so because of that, I was like, okay, I'm ready to start my own channel, my own LLC. It's got to be gold, because again, it's just changed me so much through that year and what I needed to do. So that's the name. And then who is it for? It's for educators. So if you are a teacher, coach, administrator, anyone, I tried to make all of the content really easable to understand. I also decided on YouTube videos, because again, going back to my learning disability, writing is very difficult for me. And so I needed to just speak out my ideas, to explain them, do a screen share. Over 2,000 videos, I don't edit. So I just record. If it's good, I post it right away. And so usually I try to create, record, and then it's on the YouTube channel. I put the resource in there as well for anyone to use. It's just something I enjoy.
So great. There was so much there. Thank you so much, Stephanie. If you are enjoying this conversation, Teachers on Fire, consider adding the YouTube channel to your morning commute. Start your day on fire with conversations like this one. Stephanie, let's move to some rapid fire questions. So drop some answers for us. You don't have to follow them up with lengthy explanations if you don't want to, but let's start with this one. Outside of education, what's another area of learning for you? What is it that ignites your passions outside of the classroom or the education space and brings you alive as a human being?
Yeah, I just got a Cricut. So I've been learning that
fun.
world. Also parenting. I've got 2 young boys. I have a 4-year-old, and learning the world of preschool has been interesting to me, and navigating how to teach letters, because again, I was a middle school educator. And then I also have a 1-year-old. So that is my learnings right now.
Okay. Share about a personal habit or a productivity hack that contributes to your success and keeps your fire burning.
Yeah, monotasking. So again, I used to be a huge multitasker, and it was slowing me down. And so what I learned is monotasking. There's these really cool timers that have multiple timers on them. They're like a little square or circle. And you can just say, okay, I'm going to spend 10 minutes checking my email. Once that timer is up, you go on to the next task. So that is just something that's been really helpful for me. There was an ISTE expert webinar on monotasking, and that's when I was like, I am done with multitasking and I need to move to monotasking.
Some Pomodoro there, or Pomodoro-like sort of principles there. Tell us about someone we should follow on Education X or LinkedIn and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
Yeah, well, there's that whole EduGuardians thing right now. It's kind of blowing up, but one person that has just really been a motivation for me is Bobbie. She'll just respond to a post, or she will post something that's just really inspirational. And so love the retweets that she has and shares. So thank you, Bobbie.
And Bobbie, what's her last name?
Is it Grenier?
Okay. All right. We'll look her up as well. Thank you for that. Point us to an EdTech tool that you currently love using in your professional practice beyond Cami. That's the obvious one.
Oh gosh. Okay. So I really love Google Slides. I make everything in Google Slides. I also like Canva, but I'm more of a Google Slide person. So sometimes I will take my Canva to Google Slides, which is weird probably. But then I can like move things around and get it the way that I want. And then I always send it over to Cami because of all of those accessibility features and those blended learning tools that I can use.
Who is one educator or speaker that you would recommend I interview next on the Teachers on Fire podcast?
Ryan Collins. He is an educator in Ohio, and he's just one educator that I randomly met at a conference, and he had his name badge, and it was like one of those digital ones that rolls with his name. And I was like, Ryan! And he was like, like, what? And I'm like, and we just became friends after that. And so he is just an educator that's incredible. He's a tech director. And so he knows a lot about the Google admin space. And so he has just helped me with that and just being an incredible friend as well.
Stephanie, when you don't have any more brain power for any of the productivity or creativity tasks that you're involved in, what are you streaming during your downtime right now?
Yeah, I love just listening to podcasts. I'm not a big music person, so I listen to podcasts. So usually it's education or business. I did just watch The Coach's Notebook and Doc Rivers on Netflix. So that was really interesting. Just he was talking about he had, the 5 best players on his team. And how do you get those players to not want the spotlight? How do you get them to pass the ball? And so again, that was just really interesting to me to like work together in a collaborative group.
Your Netflix viewing sounds so much more intelligent than mine, so that's impressive. Stephanie, as we start to wrap up, what are the best ways for the Teachers on Fire listening to follow you?
Yeah, social media, Mrs. Howell 24, or on the Gold EDU group. We have a collaborative group where it is a Google group with a bunch of educators asking questions, sharing templates, sharing ideas. And it's just a really great community if you're looking for a resource or support when it comes to education.
Sounds good, Stephanie. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. This conversation has been fun and inspiring for me. And you are, as I mentioned earlier, you are the recipient of multiple awards. On the one edition of the Teachers on Fire Awards, you cleaned up with podcast and YouTube channel and Twitter account. It was still Twitter at the time. And so here we are finally connecting in real time. What a pleasure for me. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on what sounds like a very busy Saturday morning. So I really appreciate it. Teachers on Fire. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. So grateful that you too decided to spend some of your day tuning into this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Stephanie Howell sparked your thinking and ignited your practice. Make sure you connect with her on Twitter, LinkedIn, and grab a copy of Control the Chaos. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. There's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.